Today's video, I want to go over some of the biggest scams that I see in my industry. Now, there is a lot going on in my industry. I'm well aware of that. I want to preface this by saying I do a lot of insurance restoration with Dose Construction, and I do go door to door after storms happen. I don't think there's anything wrong with going door to door, but I think there is a big problem with how a lot of people conduct their business moving past that, meaning inspections, how they sign people up on contingencies, having significantly lower bids, making sure not to do cash payments, quote unquote giving a homeowner a free roof when we all know that's not the case. If you're a homeowner that has a 3-tab shingle, making sure you have pictures before anybody does any repairs or tarps on your home. And then lastly, making sure you know what you're looking at when you go to review a photo report. So starting with the contingencies, this is something a lot of roofing contractors use. The basic function of a contingency is to allow the contractor to be able to communicate with your insurance. Now, some people aren't comfortable with this. I 100% understand. This is not a common practice we do with absolutely everybody. It usually will streamline the process and it helps us make sure that everything gets dealt in a timely fashion. And most of the time, it's not going to be a problem for a homeowner. Now, there are certain contingencies that roofing contractors will have homeowners sign up, and there are some issues with some of them. One of the big ones I see is when a homeowner unknowingly signs a contingency that is also a letter of representation. What this means is you're essentially hiring a public adjuster out of the gate, which is not always necessary, and I'll be honest with you, most of the time it's not if it's a good storm. A public adjuster does the same thing that an insurance adjuster does, he just works for a homeowner. Now, why is this not necessarily a good thing out of the gate? Number one, a PA is going to take a percentage off the top. Most of them are going to work anywhere from 10 to 20% of the claim. So what's left is what your contractor has to work with. Why would a contractor have a PA signed up out of the gate? So a lot of these guys do not know how to handle the insurance claims process. They hire a PA out of the gate, and then that's who takes on the whole process. One of the big issues I have with this too as a homeowner is because when they sign this letter of representation, now their name gets to be on every check. It can be a big problem for a homeowner because a lot of people are going to push this at the beginning of the claim, meaning if problems arise or if they feel this is not the best contractor for them, it's just not a good fit personality-wise, the way they conduct business. A lot of times this is going to lock you in and you can't break these without a substantial fee. So making sure you're reading through these contingencies and making sure it's something that you're comfortable moving forward with and making sure it's not signing you up for a little bit more than you ask for. Now, let's cover a quote-unquote free roof. This is something I even see marketed on a lot of brochures, unfortunately. There is no such thing as a free roof. Any contractor that is promising you a free roof is committing insurance fraud or helping a homeowner unknowingly commit insurance fraud. What do I mean by this? If you're going through an insurance claim, depending on how your policy is written, I'm not going to go super deep into that, but most people have an RCV policy, meaning when they get approved, they only have to pay their deductible. That's great. What these contractors are doing is they're finding multiple different ways to help a homeowner cover a deductible. I can give you a couple examples. Something that's been outlawed in Georgia over the last few years is yard sign allowances. While I love to put a yard sign in a homeowner's yard, that way I can have free advertisement and it's a mutual understanding this is going to benefit both of us, a lot of contractors are going to pay homeowners to put this in their yard. You cannot do that. During an insurance claim, any money that you are quote unquote rewarding to the homeowner through these means is considered insurance fraud. Another way they do this is they'll get supplements approved inside of a claim and they will pay those supplements to the homeowner or let them keep the money even though the insurance company approves these supplements towards the job because they're supposed to be rewarded to the contractor for the work they're actually doing. So even if they're doing the work but not getting paid for it, that is profitizing off of an insurance claim, which again is illegal. So very, very super cautious. If it sounds too good to be true, then it probably is. Extensive damage without a storm. If you have somebody inspect your roof, they come down and it is extensive damage. Maybe let's say they're claiming there was a large hail event that didn't happen and no new roofs are getting put up in the neighborhood. Nobody's been talking about it. And all of a sudden you have a substantial amount of damage, that's usually going to be a red flag. If they can't produce a storm date that reflects on paper what we're seeing on the roof, let's say there's no what we call collateral damages on the ground, meaning dents on downspouts, gutters, window wraps, window screens, and there's only damage on the shingles, that's a pretty big red flag. Now, without getting too in depth, I do have another video that I can put up that goes over vandalism. Homeowners that have a 3-tab shingle, which I'll also put a picture up, that way you know exactly what I'm talking about, really beware of a lot of sketchy roofing contractors. And make sure that if you do allow them to do an inspection and you did have some heavy winds recently, or they noticed some shingles and you did too, make sure you watch these people doing an inspection, because it is very, very common for roofing contractors to get up on roofs and vandalize them. And a lot of companies I hear about also use this as a business model, meaning they will send people out to get the approval from a homeowner to do the inspection. Then they have certain people that'll come out and do the inspection, come up, crease, bend shingles, and make it look like a wind event. Now, does wind happen in Georgia, and will it damage shingles? Absolutely. I do see it all the time, especially on older 3-tabs, sometimes even on newer ones that are just installed improperly, or it's just where they're located. Sometimes they're up on a hill where the wind hits it just perfectly, and there's just crazy cases that I've seen a lot. Now, the vandalism is just so prevalent. In fact, when I get up on a roof, when it's a 3-tab shingle, I start filming typically before I even get up on that roof, because I've been dealing with even one recently where somebody went up there and claimed they didn't vandalize it, but it just didn't make sense. Especially if they come down, they're showing you photo reports and there's wind creases on every single slope. It's just very rare that happens. I'm no expert in weather, but I do know storms are directional, and most winds are going to come out of 1 to 2 directions at the very most, but they're not going to come at 60, 70, 80, 90 miles an hour off the backside of a roof, causing wind damage all around the home. What that usually means is a contractor's trying to get a roof paid for by the insurance, and he's trying to make sure that they don't slope the roof, meaning quote unquote pay for only half the roof. They're going to continue to do additional damages on top of the wind to make sure that it has a higher chance of getting paid for. This is a really common thing where I see a lot of homeowners get taken advantage of. So making sure that if they do take a photo report, you're looking at it, you're asking questions, and making sure you're referencing either my videos or another video that clearly shows what vandalism is versus what is legitimate wind damage. It can save you a lot of headache in the future, because let's say you do decide to file a claim on quote unquote wind damage and it gets denied. Even if it is true vandalism and you do want to go after that contractor after the fact, you have to file another claim against vandalism to get it paid for. Most of these carriers are just not going to switch the type of loss in the middle of a claim. It's a very rare occurrence, and they unfortunately withhold the right not to do that. Also, getting pictures before tarping is super critical. I've even honestly made this mistake before. The only time I see this used as a scamming tactic is when it's only a couple missing shingles and somebody goes and puts a 20 by 10 foot tarp up there. They charge you $2,000 when in all honesty they could have spent 5 minutes, cut that tarp, and just tarped what was really necessary to prevent any further damages. This is something I see super common after big storms, hurricanes, things of that nature, where people are just coming in to make a quick buck and leave town. Be very cautious. Make sure if you can and it's accessible, if you have a one-story home, take the photos of what it looked like before, and please ask your contractor to do the same to make sure they're not over-tarping. I've seen insurance companies get into wars with contractors and homeowners about, oh, they over-tarped this, they did too much here, we're not going to pay for that. And sometimes it's justified to where they just did too much work. They didn't need to, in the hopes they can damage more shingles just to get an approval. So something to definitely watch out for. Last thing I wanted to get into, and this is super common in states where they're unlicensed, which is unfortunately where I work as well in Georgia. It is an unlicensed state. So definitely do your research on contractors. I understand them having a long history, meaning they've been in business for 10 plus years is super, super important. But also some people just fly under the radar, making sure they're certified through a manufacturer, like we're certified through Atlas. 99 out of 100 times, if they're certified through a manufacturer, they are going to be licensed, because these manufacturers are not going to push their product through contractors that are unlicensed. So being licensed, being insured, super critical. Make sure you get that paperwork on the front end. It's going to save you a lot of headache and a lot of nightmares on the back end. If you hire a contractor that's not insured, somebody falls off a roof, somebody gets hurt, now you're looking at the punitive damages as a homeowner. And that's something that can easily be avoided if you just ask for that kind of paperwork on the front end. Just wanted to get into several of the biggest scams that I see in my industry and things you may want to watch out for, ask additional questions, or altogether just stay away from. Thanks for watching, guys.